multipliers. But I wanted to be able to talk to you just briefly here from Nairobi about some of UNEP's work relevant to climate change in the world oceans. First of all, we do have a strong mitigation program at UNEP. But as all of us oceanographers know, mitigation is a long process, and many of the climate drivers operate on very long timescales. So even if we are to come to substantial mitigation agreements in the UNFCCC, for example, it will be many, many decades before they're felt and start to impact on climate change. This is why we have an urgent need to take adaptation action today. And that's my job here at UNEP, is as director of the adaptation work. And I'll just describe very briefly some of the things we're doing in adaptation. The first thing is looking at ecosystem-based approaches. We have a program, an ecosystem-based adaptation. This is harnessing the natural resilience that ecosystems have built up over many millennia to natural droughts, natural floods, to reduce human vulnerability to climate change. We have a very active program in high mountain regions funded by the German government, and I'm very pleased to announce that we are in early discussions with the European Commission for a major program in coastal areas on small island developing states, which are some of the most vulnerable places in the world, as you know, to sea level rise. So this will be starting up in the next few months, and will be a very strong program in looking at how we can use coral reefs, mangroves, and other aspects of coastal ecosystems to help protect humans from sea level rise. A second program that we have is the Global Adaptation Network. This is very much built on regional strengths, regional networks, which are a way of harnessing communities of practice, people who are engaged in putting adaptation projects to work on the ground and bringing them together virtually through the internet, in person, in various meetings, and share best practices. Now, sometimes different regions have different concerns. We can't grow mangroves in the Arctic. There's no sea ice loss going on in the tropics. So that's why this global network is very much built up on regional networks where they can most effectively share best practices. ProVia. This is a third element within the UNEP adaptation portfolio. It's the program on vulnerability, impacts, and adaptation. And it's very much a link with the scientific research community, a way for us to ensure that the adaptation projects that we're putting in place on the ground are based on good science and good economics. ProVia is meant to be an international scientific program akin to the World Climate Research Program, which many of you know about. ProVia is new though, and much more interdisciplinary. It's an effort to underpin the IPCC Working Group 2 on vulnerability, impacts, and adaptation in a similar way that the World Climate Research Program community has underpinned Working Group 1 on detection and attribution of anthropogenic change. Finally, a fourth element of our work in adaptation here at UNEP is helping countries access finance. We have a large program both as a multilateral implementing entity, that is obtaining funding from the Global Environment Fund, from the Adaptation Fund, and in the future perhaps the Global Environment Fund, and funneling that to countries for country scale projects or local projects on the ground. We also support countries that want direct access to these sources of funding. So we have a program for assisting countries in making sure they have the required fiduciary standards, the required content in their proposals in order to gain accreditation to these sources of funding themselves. So UNEP does both of these tasks. So that's a brief overview of our adaptation work at UNEP. Thank you very much.